Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Ellen here with a new video for you. Welcome to the 5th part of What If Deku Had the Rinnegan. Welcome back to Season 2. I just wanted to greet you guys by saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. So, we begin. Sorry, but we're taking it, Todoroki Shoto announced clearly, narrowing his eyes. Your time is up. Izuku said nothing, even though he felt both Yaoyorozu and Uraraka stiffen. They both knew what Todoroki was capable of, and they both knew he'd expected this. Still, he shifted anxiously. He had hoped to avoid this for a little longer. Todoroki's team was an absolute powerhouse. Ida, Kaminari, Todoroki, and Tokoyami. Each of these students brought something important to the table. Kaminari was the easiest to deal with, considering the boy could be a bit of a double-edged sword. However, he could and would take down many people at once if it came down to it. He suspected that was why Todoroki kept the blonde in the team despite losing the insulation that Momo would have provided. Kaminari was an excellent last resort card. You will try. Todoroki himself was tremendously powerful, of course. He brought a level of battlefield control few could match. Even Izuku would be hard-pressed to try and approach the level of ruins the boy could bring about, at least while around other people. A lot of Izuku's more destructive techniques had the downside of being area of effect, which would hurt his own team. His enemy had no such restriction. He'd be wise to be cautious. He knew this. And yet something within him shifted in response to that, coiled in something akin to disgust. Todoroki was powerful, yes. Enough to challenge him? Izuku didn't think so. Not even close. Not if he stopped holding back. No, he couldn't think like that. His eyes flared to life. The enemy started to run at them, bursting forward in part due to Ida's propulsion. They were quick, tremendously so. Now! But not quick enough. Yaoyorozu-san handed him two objects, a sphere and a bundle of cloth. He threw it at the ground in front of them with no reservations. Shoto's eyes widened. He moved his lips to tell them to stop. But it was too late. The flashbang exploded. Having known what to expect, Team Midoriya knew to close their eyes. Team Todoroki wasn't nearly as lucky. With a loud crack, a brilliant flash of bright white light completely took over the arena. This was the benefit of having both a brilliant inventor and a woman who could produce anything on hand. Their plans weren't just plans, and tools needed were always on hand. As Izuku once again gave Uraraka the signal to use her quirk and felt the jetpack whirring to life, he took in a breath and, before anyone could do anything, threw the second of the objects forward. A 10 million point headband. Of course, if anyone was to look closely at it, they'd see the words, in tiny lettering, "You've been fooled." But they wouldn't, not with 5 minutes on the clock and ticking, not with it hidden on the inside of the zero. As the team went back into the air, Izuku grinned, took in a breath, and screamed, "Damn it! He got the 10 million!" Down below, as Todoroki's eyes opened, he saw Endeavor's son look up in shock and rage. Knew the boy could see, from his angle, that Izuku still had his headband with him, around his wrist instead of his head. But others wouldn't see it, not from below, not from afar. They'd see the 10 million headband flying with the wind, free from his now loose hair. They'd see it land on Todoroki's hand. And they'd go for blood. Give me that, two-tone! Bakugo was the first to jump at the chance, but a lot of teams had been running at them once Izuku's had run off. That was the point of building distance. They could get away with details like that. As Bakugo leapt like a maniac at Todoroki's team, with what seemed like a dozen smaller teams following in his footsteps, Endeavor's son had to take his eyes off of Izuku and fight off his assailants. By thrusting out both of his palms, he completely froze over the stadium to both of his sides, freezing people's legs to the arena. A brilliant tactic, powerful and simple. It'd stop most of them. It wouldn't stop Bakugo, however. Bakugo, who was bound only to Sero, was free to blow up the walls of ice that stood in his way and scream bloody murder. Meanwhile, Dark Shadow fired off of Tokoyami and tried to attack them up in the air. He clicked his tongue. He'd been hoping the boy would go for Kacchan instead. Clearly not. Apparently, misdirection alone wouldn't be enough. Hey, Deku, running out of fuel here. He nodded, extending a hand towards the incoming Dark Shadow, who already was trying to extend a claw towards them. Diva Path! The powerful explosion of repulsive force that followed was more than enough to fling the quirk construction away, even partially tearing it apart. He felt bad, but only momentarily, and then Mei turned the jetpack's propulsor forward so they'd head even further back, and he felt his weight start to increase yet again. Silently, Momo handed Uraraka a bag to get sick into, just in case. They landed yet again, 4 minutes left, more or less. Only Minetta's team was nearby. Tapping into the Asura path, Izuku quickly blasted at their feet with a weak energy blast, and then fired a more powerful one soon after. Even Shoji and his weird turtle strategy couldn't last forever. They backed off. Good.
"This is working pretty so far, 10 million,
the pink-haired girl, May, cheered.
"You fight dirty. Not exactly the best advertisement, but I'll get my chance. Nice job."
Izuku nodded to himself, smiling softly as the Rinnegan panned over the developing battlefield. 3 minutes and 22 seconds. One team, Aoyama's team, with a weird purple-haired kid as the rider, had their eyes on them now. He didn't want to build more distance, so he just fired at them a few times. Not worth it. They seemed to get the memo, or maybe not. Maybe they were just distracted by the fact that an enraged Bakugo slammed into the rider after being slammed back by a pillar of ice, courtesy of Todoroki, who still had to deal with way too many teams at once. He'd come for him, though. Izuku knew he would. The clock ticked. 3 minutes, he informed his team. Todoroki will take one more to get enough space to rush us. We'll have to survive too. Catch your breaths, okay? 3 girls nodded with different degrees of enthusiasm. Only Uraraka spoke, though. She only sounded mildly sick. "It's really cool how you manage to plan like that, you know? You're so shy usually, but you've got a really mean mind." For some reason, he felt sheepish. His cheeks took on a rosy color. Thanks? Not the time. Keep an eye out, everyone. Yayorozu, if you would, I know, I remember. And she handed him a third object. Here. While they all recover from this tiresome task, let's take a moment to appreciate our video editors. They do great work, don't they? Like magic. Well, I can't tell you all of their secrets, but thanks to this video's sponsor, I can reveal one of them, because this video is sponsored by Adobe. Adobe is redefining the digital experience through game-changing innovations that shape the next generation of storytelling. Adobe makes it easy to create, edit, and share digital documents securely, allowing you to collaborate and communicate across devices. Adobe Photoshop is your go-to application for faster graphics editing and digital art as a whole. At We the Celestials, all our thumbnails across every channel are created with Adobe Photoshop. Adobe Premiere Pro is a timeline-based and non-linear video editing software application that is versatile and easy for beginning and master editors. Finally, Adobe After Effects is the industry standard tool for digital visual effects, motion graphics, and compositing applications used in post-production. Many of our voice actors, audio editors, and video editors use Premiere Pro and After Effects to produce these high-quality videos. In fact, I'm using Adobe Audition right now to record this audio. Click the link in the description to start creating now, and thank you to Adobe for sponsoring this video. The fight moved on. Like Izuku predicted, before the clock ticked down to 2 minutes, Todoroki had managed to distract Bakugo for long enough for the blonde to get a vendetta against someone else, and now had his eyes on him once again. Judging by the curl of his lips, he knew Todoroki wouldn't let them go as easily this time. Despite himself, Izuku grinned. The same sort of dangerous adrenaline he felt when he got to use the Rinnegan to his heart's content in the USJ now flowed through his veins, and it did so in the form of chakra, power, intent. He took the object he'd been handed, aimed it at Todoroki, and focused. Already the boy had barked orders for Dark Shadow to bat it away and protect them. He knew what came next. Good. He didn't even say anything this time. It wasn't needed. He focused his chakra into a point, channeled it through the Diva path, and generated repelling force on the object.
Yes! Go, my babies!
The wire arrow cut through the air like butter, and the smokescreen glued to the tip of it erupted violently just as they'd planned when Dark Shadow defended against it. The hook, batted away, was now connected to the ground instead. It would do. As the hook made them faster by pulling them in part due to Uraraka's help, Izuku grinned. When Team Todoroki emerged from the heavy cloud of smoke, their leader was enraged, eyes wide and a snarl on his face. "Stop playing games with me!" But Izuku was close now, having rushed in while they were blinded. Far too close, and the outstretched hand that reached for them was waiting and ready. "I wasn't, but okay. Bansho Tenin!" The sound of Todoroki's rage was audible when the headband was ripped from him and sent flying straight into Izuku's hand, but not the one from his forehead. Nice use of the fake headband, but, Ida, you really should have remembered this. My eyesight. His eyes flashed. Todoroki snarled, thrusting a hand forward as a pillar of ice blossomed from underneath them, all spikes and odd angles. Is perfect. The ice forced him backwards, and unfortunately he was made to let go of the headband he'd stolen from the enemy. Even now, Momo had to hand him a staff to use to bat away the hands of Nieta Monoma, who tried to reach for him. But it was fine. 40 seconds remained, a long time, but not nearly enough. They kept building distance. Todoroki kept following, but he had to gather more headbands. In the end, he ran out of time. And then it was over.
Time up!
All Might watched from the stands with a conflicted expression. When he told young Midoriya to go above and beyond, he'd sincerely hoped the boy would follow him, would show the world that he was a hero worth remembering. And he certainly was. But something still left a bitter taste in his mouth. It wasn't the boy's quirk, despite how oddly powerful it was. All Might himself was no stranger to weird, amazingly strong abilities. One for All was, of course, unique, but he knew better than to say what is and isn't possible. Likewise, it wasn't that the boy was holding back against his enemies either. He knew what Midoriya was capable of with those eyes of his, had seen it enough times. No, it was in how effortless it seemed to be for Midoriya to predict and outplay his opponents. How the boy managed to brute force his way through the first task through strength and ingenuity, only to win the second through a clever combination of manipulation, strategy, power, and subterfuge. The second task, like the first, had been a complete and total win. His mind flashed to the memory of the USJ, a broken and bloodied Midoriya, eyes wide even in unconsciousness. What he'd done to the enemy. He'd wondered, for perhaps a bit too long, what lesson Midoriya had taken from that experience. All Might thought he knew the answer now. To Midoriya, his eyes were tremendously powerful, but they weren't enough. What he saw in the green-haired boy down there was a sort of burning ambition that almost scared him. A drive for victory like that of Bakugo, but colder. Midoriya Izuku had a pure heart, All Might knew. The more he looked into the boy, the more he talked to the boy, the more All Might seriously considered Izuku as a successor, despite his supposedly being almost certain of Mirio's spot. Reading through Midoriya's essays on heroics made him hope. And yet, time and time again, he would see the boy in action and have those hopes mixed with a healthy dose of powerful apprehension. Midoriya had won completely and utterly thus far. But the sports festival was not yet over. Midoriya stared at Todoroki in a quiet hallway. His eyes were wide, his tongue felt dry, his fingers quivered. I see. It was hard to find the words to even describe such a situation. Todoroki, his supposed rival, had almost confided in him. Why the boy had called him over to tell him of his life was beyond Izuku, but he had. He told him of endeavor and his obsession, of relentless training and of a dual-natured quirk. He told him of quirk marriages. And then, I've been thinking, your quirk, it does too many things. It's too powerful. And a lot of people have their eyes on you. Emotionless eyes pried into his own. You're like me, aren't you? And Izuku remembered a lot of things right then and there. He remembered the USJ and his first experience with his quirk, a childhood being mocked, called names, his first taste of nearly limitless power, his first experience with its consequences, how it felt to take a life. Finally, he remembered two things, Recovery Girl's remark way back then. Scar tissue, she'd said. On his eyes. Scar tissue. And he remembered a mask. He wanted to say no. He should say no. What came out was worse. I don't know. I think I'm worse. Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoyed. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.